Let's jump right into today's explainer. We're unpacking a fascinating, honestly kind of wild dynamic that's hiding in plain sight in so many homes. We're looking at the hidden mechanics of how keeping the peace, with the best of intentions, can actually secretly destroy a relationship. So let's just dive right in. We're going to explore how trying to be the good guy or that endlessly patient partner can literally create the exact toxic environment you're so desperately trying to avoid.
Have you ever noticed how some relationships seem to just flip almost overnight? It's pretty jarring. Picture a couple, maybe you know one, maybe you've been one, who once laughed together, totally connected, and then suddenly they're spending way more time arguing than smiling. Conversations that used to be so warm become heavy, just full of sarcasm, sharp criticism, and this thick, constant tension you could cut with a knife. From the outside, it looks like one person just woke up one day and became difficult. But actually, scratch that. Relationships rarely fall apart that fast. It happens little by little, right under our noses.
Which brings us to the trap of good intentions, and how a totally normal, stressful day sparks a truly toxic habit.
So, imagine this. A woman has an absolutely terrible, stressful day. She comes home completely frustrated and just snaps, speaks really harshly to her partner. Now the guy, he knows she isn't really mad at him. So instead of calling out the disrespectful tone, he focuses 100% on fixing it, on making her feel better. He apologizes even though he literally didn't do anything wrong. He comforts her, maybe grabs her favorite takeout, because hey, isn't that what a loving, supportive partner is supposed to do? It sounds like amazing compassion, right? Well, here is where the trap is set. There's this massive gap between what we intend and what actually happens. You think you're teaching compassion and patience, you're thinking, she's upset, I'll be patient, it'll blow over. But the reality? When this becomes the go-to pattern, what you are actually teaching is that there are zero consequences for disrespectful behavior. By just quietly eating that disrespect instead of setting a clear boundary, you're not just being the nice guy, you are actively, repeatedly rewarding hurtful behavior.
Unhealthy dynamics, they don't just parachute in out of nowhere, they sneak in through repetition. Day one, you're just comforting a bad mood. No big deal, it's a one-off. But fast forward to week 3, and you're automatically apologizing for things you didn't even do just to dodge an argument. And by month 6, you're basically walking on eggshells in your own house. Every single time you bite your tongue, it gets just a tiny bit easier to stay silent the next time. And sadly, every time you repeat that behavior, you're sending a loud and clear message, cementing this terrifying new normal.
This leads directly into the quiet loss of respect and how we end up adjusting to an unhealthy normal.
You see, the big takeaway here is that respect is almost never lost in some massive, dramatic, movie-style blow-up. It fades quietly, almost invisibly, through repeated experiences. The man is essentially training himself that accommodating bad behavior, just keeping the peace, is way more important than protecting his own self-respect. And human beings, we're adaptable. We naturally adjust to whatever becomes our daily normal. But when your normal is constantly soothing someone who talks down to you, you are fundamentally mutating the DNA of the relationship. Once that respect starts to slip, everyday interactions completely shift. Sarcastic comments, they become a daily thing. Criticism morphs from being about a situation to becoming deeply, painfully personal. Tiny, nothing disagreements suddenly explode into massive tension. Why? Because one partner is constantly adjusting, making themselves smaller and smaller, while the other gets more and more comfortable letting out their frustration without a filter. They literally never have to check their own behavior because you're busy managing all the emotional fallout for them.
If you have ever been the designated peacekeeper, I guarantee you've asked yourself this exact question. Why is this getting worse when I am doing literally everything I can to make her happy? It is so confusing, right? So what do? You start working even harder. You listen more intently. You apologize faster. You avoid disagreements like the plague. You figure, if I just give a little more, it'll fix it. But here is the really uncomfortable truth. The more you ignore the disrespect, the more normal that disrespect begins to feel. Trying harder and giving more is absolutely not the solution when the entire balance of the relationship is totally out of whack.
This severe imbalance turns into what we call emotional survival. This is a state where one person feels entirely 100% responsible for managing the other person's emotions just to prevent a fight, rather than existing in a safe, equal partnership. The exact second one partner becomes terrified to just speak honestly, it stops being a partnership altogether. No relationship can stay healthy when one person feels like they're on emotional guard duty every single day. You aren't thriving anymore, you are literally just surviving. Let's unpack the hidden internal costs of this survival mode, because honestly, you might not even realize how much you've changed until you stop and look at what it's doing to you on the inside. Your self-confidence starts shrinking, mainly because you've just stopped trusting your own judgment. You find yourself second-guessing incredibly simple decisions, constantly wondering, wait, is this going to trigger a fight? You start asking for permission for things you never used to ask about. And the absolute worst part? You live in this constant state of anticipation, always monitoring her mood, checking the emotional weather of the room before you even walk through the front door. Guys, that is not love. That is a prison built entirely out of your own good intentions.
But listen, there is a way out. We're going to look at breaking this cycle with boundaries and how to finally move from survival back to true partnership.
First things first, we have to interrupt the pattern. Sitting back and waiting for things to miraculously fix themselves almost never works, because patterns don't just vanish over time. They grow, they get stronger. The single healthiest thing you can do right now is not to give more to the relationship, it's to fundamentally change what you are willing to accept. But before we get into the how, we really need to shatter a massive myth. A lot of men think they've only got two choices: either stay totally quiet and just eat the disrespect, or eventually explode in this huge fit of anger after months of bottling it all up. That is a completely false choice. The goal here is absolutely not to become aggressive or vengeful. Real, healthy boundaries, they don't start with shouting. They start with honesty and an incredible, grounded calmness.
So here are the exact actionable steps to actually break this cycle. Step 1. The very next time the disrespect happens, you have to resist that overwhelming urge to fix her mood or apologize or smooth things over with a nice gesture. Just stop. Step 2. Calmly state your boundary. You say something super simple, like, I want to have this conversation, but I don't want us speaking to each other this way. Notice how that's not an attack. You're not blaming, you're not criticizing, you are simply setting a standard of respect. And step 3, which is hands down the most important, be relentlessly consistent every single time it happens.
Actually, let's linger on that last point for a second, because we need a quick reality check here. A boundary that only exists once isn't a boundary. It's just a reaction. The first time you calmly push back, you're probably going to get a look of shock. The second time, you might face some serious resistance, or she might even accuse you of starting an argument. And this right here is exactly where most people fold and retreat. But you have to remember, you aren't trying to win an argument. You are trying to rewire a deep-seated pattern. And lasting change, it requires absolute, unwavering consistency.
As we start to wrap up this explainer, I really want you to shift the spotlight inward for a second and ask yourself, what have I been doing that allows this pattern to keep going? Look, one of the biggest mistakes we make is believing our job is to change the other person. You can't. You simply cannot force someone else to communicate differently. But honestly, that is incredible news. It means you hold all the power to change what happens next, because you are the sole decider of what behavior you will accept in your life.
Which brings us to this incredibly powerful realization. Kindness should never require you to abandon your self-respect. Look, being patient, wanting peace, these are beautiful, wonderful traits. But the exact moment kindness exists without boundaries, it stops being respected as a strength and starts being treated as a baseline expectation. The absolute healthiest, longest-lasting relationships thrive because both partners understand that love and respect must always, always grow together. If one disappears, the other simply cannot survive.
I want to leave you with one final thought today. Will you stop confusing silence with peace and start choosing self-respect? A relationship is supposed to be a place where both people feel safe, valued, and truly heard. You absolutely have the courage and the capability to interrupt this exhausting cycle. By communicating honestly and just straight up refusing to participate in a dynamic that chips away at your confidence, you are giving your relationship its absolute best chance to become truly healthy again. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and I really hope this sparks a massive positive shift for you.